Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us at the place where hope is happening, the Hopenning. I am Marina, and I'm here with my lovely co-host, Fran. And we created this space because we feel that we all can do with a little bit more hope in the world. Together, Fran and I find guests who can help us and who is also passionate about bringing hope to the hopeless and changing the world one person at a time. So I am a rapid transformational therapy practitioner and a clinical hypnotherapist, and Fran is a full-time teacher, and she does rapid transformational therapy part-time. So we have a wonderful, amazing guest, exciting guest with us today, and Fran will have the honors to introduce him.
And Marina, it truly is an honor to welcome Dr. Ran Anbar to our show tonight. He is a board-certified physician in both pediatric, pulmonary, and general pediatrics, offering hypnosis and counseling services at Centerpoint Medicine in La Jolla, California, and Syracuse, New York. Dr. Anbar is also past president, fellow, and approved consultant of the American Society of Clinical Hypnosis. He has 25 years of experience working with children, and over 7,000 children he's worked with hypnotherapy, hypnosis. And he's also served as a professor of pediatrics and medicine and the director of pediatric pulmonary at SUNY Upstate Medical University in Syracuse, New York for 21 years. Dr. Anbar comes to us with a load of experience. He has written over in 50 articles and 10 different published case studies. And he's written this amazing book called Changing Children's Lives with Hypnosis, A Journey to the Center. So as we were talking before the show began, I asked Dr. Anbar if I needed to read the whole thing about him because it's like this long. He's got accreditation from all over the place. And he's so humble, which is incredible. He's so humble. He said, Fran, just introduce me. So Dr. Anbar, welcome to the show. And please tell us a little bit more about the things that you do. You've got this incredible history of case studies with children in your book. And I'm sure since your book was published, there's even more case studies, but it's just fascinating the work you do. So welcome to our show.
Thank you so much for having me and for discussing hope, because I think that is so essential. In fact, I wrote an article about the importance of hope in helping patients do better. I think that's a really important part of health. These days, I'm writing about the importance of spirituality as an important part of health, which a lot of doctors don't know about. But if I can go back to when I got involved in hypnosis, just to tell you a little bit about my background. I was trained as a pediatric pulmonologist, and 25 years ago, I was working as a pulmonologist when a young man came to see me. His referring pediatrician told me this is the most allergic child that I've ever known, and twice in his life, he almost died from eating a milk product. And I'd met him 6 days after he last was exposed to milk product. He needed to be put on a breathing machine, and his lung blew out as a result of the resuscitation. And when they put a chest tube in his chest to help the lung expand, and when they took the chest tube out, the lung collapsed again. They put the tube back in his chest and sent him to me, the pulmonologist. And I met him, and we had an instant connection. I've since learned that I connect very easily to patients, especially ones who are going to do really well with hypnosis, which is very interesting. But I didn't know this at the time. I just knew I liked him. And I told him we would take the chest tube out. And if the lung collapsed again, we'd have to do surgery to prevent it from keeping recurring, which he didn't like. We took the chest tube out, and the lung did not collapse. We sent him home. A week later, his mother calls me. She says he has terrible pain in the chest tube site, and he can't walk. And she was afraid that he'd had sustained brain damage from the resuscitation, because that's what happened when he was 7 years old. The last time he almost died, and he needed 6 months of rehabilitation after that. And I said, well, he's having trouble breathing, thinking maybe lung collapsed again. No, no trouble breathing. And I said, why are you calling me then? She said, I don't know who else to call. I said, I know very little about people who can't walk. I know very little about pain because he was having pain, chest tube site, but I can certainly arrange for him to be admitted to the hospital. So he came to the hospital under the neurologist service. The next day, I said to my nurse practitioner, let's go see him and say hello. I'll make social arrangements. So I came into his room and he was sitting at his bedside, literally shaking. Paul, his name was Paul, what's the matter? He looked very upset. I am very upset, he said. I don't know what's wrong with me. They can't tell me what's wrong with me. I've had a brain scan study. I've had a nerve conduction study where they put needles in their muscles and run electricity through it to see how they're working. And nobody can tell me what's wrong with me. I'm sick and tired of being sick. I want to go home. So I sat in front of him. I took hold of his hands, studied him, and I said, calm down. You'll be okay. You'll be able to walk again, maybe next month, maybe tomorrow. How would you like to walk now? And he said, yeah, I'd like that. So I supported him. He got up. I walked him up and down the hall, went back to his bedside. I turned to my nurse practitioner and said, what just happened here? Was it faith healing? Did I lay on hands and he's healed? She didn't know. I didn't know. The neurologist should have known, didn't know. And I remember thinking to myself, if I could bottle what happened here, it'd be worth something. I didn't know what it was, and I followed it away as a curiosity. A year later, I'm seeing the same young man in my clinic. He has asthma. And he told me, lately, when I've been smelling cheeseburgers, I've been developing asthma attacks. That was rather strange. But he's very allergic to milk products. Maybe a milk molecule is wafting through the air, setting off his asthma, which, by the way, it cannot do, since learned. I said, go to your allergist. But remember last year you couldn't walk? Could this be anything like that? Oh, no, he said, I know my asthma. This is my asthma. I said, okay, but do me a favor. Imagine eating a cheeseburger, which is something he could not do in real life. So he closes his eyes. Within seconds, his nose is opening up. He's struggling to breathe. And I'm saying, oh, no, he's going to stop breathing. I said, stop it. And he did. I said, you're kidding. No, I couldn't breathe. That was my asthma. Whoa. Now, I knew enough about hypnosis. I thought maybe this was involved. What hypnosis is, by the way, is using your imagination to help yourself. So involved in his imagination. So I said, hold out your hand and imagine a glass plate covering. Now tell me, do you feel me touching you? Nope, can't feel you touching. I said, that's weird. So I took out my pocket knife and opened the corkscrew. That pocket knife was later confiscated by the airlines. This is back in the 90s. Jabbed him with a corkscrew. Nope, can't feel that. I said, whoa, this must be hypnosis. I don't know if it's you or me, but it's worth finding out about. And immediately I'm thinking, my goodness, if you can think your way into an illness, can you think your way out? That was my rather dramatic introduction. After that, I said, let me send you to a hypnotherapist. Let's learn hypnosis and then come back and teach me, because I was interested. In college, I was, in addition to being a biology major, I was a psychology major. And I found a hypnotherapist in the community, and I told him to go see him. And he said, I don't want to go see a therapist. I'm not crazy. I want to work with you. I said, that's nice, but I don't know anything about this. I don't care. So I went to my friend, the psychiatrist and medical center, Dr. David Keith, and I asked him, can I do hypnosis with him, learn about it? Can you back me up? He said, I would. He said to me, every good physician does hypnosis, whether they realize it or not. When you interact with people, you're using hypnosis. You use imagery, you use words. And when you learn how to do hypnosis, you become a better clinician, as I'm sure Marina knows. She does hypnosis as well. So with his backing, I started reading about it, played with Paul. I turned out to be a gifted subject. What makes hypnosis work is a couple of things. One is the rapport with the clinician, and the second is the patient's own ability. There's no magic involved. There's no mind control involved. So he was really good. We were really good, and everything we did worked. So I learned how to help him turn off pain. And I learned how to talk to his subconscious. In the books, it was described you can talk to the subconscious by having the subconscious move fingers, so like the Ouija board. It'll say yes or no. But I got tired within about 5 minutes of asking yes and no questions. So I said, would you talk to me? And he said, yes. So the next session, I actually recorded this session. I asked the subconscious lots of questions, like all these existential questions, like, Have you been to heaven? What is God? What is love? What is music? All the big questions. And it had answers for everything. The only thing it couldn't do is channel my grandmother who had passed. Although I've met people later who appear to channel. It's very interesting. When he came out of hypnosis, he had no recollection of what had happened, which is pretty typical when your subconscious is involved. And so I asked him the same questions again, and he gave different answers. Like the love question was really interesting. The subconscious gave a very profound definition of love. The conscious self started giggling. I've never been in love. I don't really know. So it was kind of acting like a teenager. And that's when I started learning that subconscious is a different realm of the mind. And I've seen that in thousands of patients. Subconscious is very, very interesting. And so that's how I got started. I worked with my kids who had lung problems for a while. And it worked so well, I thought it was not fair to withhold from other kids. I'm a general pediatrician as well. So I started working with kids of all different types, kids with headaches, stomach aches, and anxiety, bedwetting, and hair pulling, and nail biting, the gamut. And then 8 years ago, my wife got tired of living in central New York. There was something about the snow from November till April we didn't appreciate it. I'm not sure it was exactly. So we decided to move to the nicest place in the country, in my opinion, is La Jolla, California. And then I decided to recast my career and just focus full time on doing hypnosis. So I have a full-time pediatric practice doing hypnosis and counseling, which I've been doing for the last 8 years. It's thriving. There's up to 7 providers now, all doing the same thing. And I've had, a lot of cool adventures. And if I may say one more thing in this very long introduction, is that what I have learned is that every person with chronic symptoms, and that's half the country, every person with chronic symptoms can benefit from hypnosis. And the reason is this: when you have chronic symptoms, your psychology is involved. Either you're anxious or depressed or unhappy that you have these symptoms, and that mood will affect how the symptoms present. And then in hypnosis, you can learn to regulate your emotions and your symptoms can improve. And there's a significant number of patients, a minority, but a large number, for whom the psychological issue is the primary driving force of the symptoms. For example, somebody who gets stomach aches because they're bullied in school, or somebody who has headaches because their boss is hard at work. Those are symptoms that will go away with hypnosis. You teach people to deal with their psychology, the symptoms go away. And this is far better for people than taking pills and taking all sorts of other alternative medications that don't address the underlying issue. And so I believe that the word needs to get out, which has been an interesting adventure in its own right, to get people to understand that and half the country can benefit. The other half could also benefit because you could use hypnosis to improve your academic performance, your athletic performance, your acting ability. I mean, the mind is involved in most of what we do as humans, and hypnosis can help you sharpen that. But the sad truth is people don't know it. There's not enough mental health practitioners to be available to half the country. And so part of besides making people aware of the power of hypnosis, we need to get primary care providers involved in teaching their patients. We need to get social workers, nurses, and nurse practitioners, a lot of health people involved in teaching these skills. So that's my quite long introduction. Hopefully it was interesting.
Well, you said things that I had never known before, so it was wonderful. And I'm sure our viewers have never heard these before too, so we appreciate that. Marina, did you have a question that you were going to ask Dr. Anbar?
I have many.
I bet.
So I find that working with kids is one of the most fascinating things because of their imaginations. And I've listened to some of your other media out there and about the exact same thing. So on a daily basis, how do you use hypnosis with your pediatric clients or patients, not clients? I have clients, you have patients.
So the wonderful thing about kids, as you know, is they don't have a lot of preconceived notions. So you don't have to waste time telling them, well, hypnosis won't make you cluck like a chicken, stuff like that.
They would probably like that.
That'd be a good game. The other thing about kids is that they are using their imagination a lot more than adults. Adults can do hypnosis as well, but again, sometimes you have to be able to go out of your comfort zone. Another thing about kids is that, like in adolescence, change is happening whether you're ready or not. And so when you add hypnosis, they just incorporate into their change. When you have an adult who's used to being dysfunctional, for example, for 30 years, change is more difficult, because if you change, then your whole life can change, and maybe the wife or the spouse who married you won't like you in a changed version. Maybe they married you because you were dysfunctional, or maybe you took a certain job because of your problems, and now you want to change jobs. So change is much more unsettling, I believe, for an adult than for a child. So how I use it with kids, I teach the average kid 9 and above. Hypnosis at a younger age is doable, but it has a different appearance. But 9 and above, let's say, I teach them first the concept of positive self-talk. The words we use, the intentions we set, have a big power over how we react. You both know that, but many people don't realize it. And I actually show a physical demonstration, which is very convincing, where I have the child hold out the arm and I push on I find a place where I can barely push down their arm. So if they're much stronger than I am, I'll put my hand over the wrist. If I'm stronger than them, I'll put my hand over their elbow, so there is less torque. And then I'll try to push down their arm, and they'll show how strong they are. Then I'll have them say, I'm weak, I'm weak, I'm weak. And suddenly they're weak. Versus I'm strong, I'm strong, I'm strong, and they're strong. Mm-hmm. If they say they're not weak, they also get weak. And then we have a discussion about how the words we use affect us. And kids get it really fast. And then we build on that. So we talk about the importance of positive talk. Rather than saying I'm angry, say I'd like to become calmer. Rather than saying I'm nervous, I want to be confident. So that's a way of reframing things. Rather than saying sad, I want to figure out how to feel happier over time. That's the first lesson. And the second lesson I teach them is how to use hypnosis formally, which means going to a relaxing, calm place in their mind where they imagine with all of their senses to make it seem more real. You know, when you imagine a sense, the part of your mind that actually senses those things will activate. Actually, you see that on functional magnetic resonance imagery. But I tell the kid that it seems more real. Then I'll teach them progressive relaxation, relax them head to toe. And very importantly, I teach them how to trigger a relaxation response with a hand sign, like A-OK, crossing fingers, thumbs up. The child gets to pick. And I tell them, when you're doing hypnosis, tell yourself, whenever I want to calm myself, I'll make my hand sign, and I'll become this calm even when I'm not doing hypnosis. So I'll walk them through that in the second session. And then when we're done, I'll say, I've been typing to, so now you get to do it on your own. So they immediately do it on their own. And I'll say, and tell me when you're done if it's the same or better as when we did it together. Don't give the worst option, same or better. Call it forced choice, right? And they'll usually say it's better. And I'll say, great. Whatever they say, I say, great, you don't need me then. Immediately I transfer ownership to them. Very, very important in my mind is for people to understand all hypnosis is self-hypnosis, you own it. So they're not dependent on me. I don't like making tapes of what we're doing because then depend on my voice. Although on occasion I will make a tape if the child requests it. That's the second session. And the third session is how to interact with the subconscious, as I described it. With Paul, there's many ways of doing that. There's the finger method. You can have them talk. You can have them type. You can have them draw. There's all sorts of different things. And getting information from the subconscious. Oftentimes, subconscious is rich, right? Rich with information. I don't understand how trained mental health professional. I'm not. I'm a pediatrician. I don't understand how trained mental health professionals do psychology without accessing the subconscious directly when they can just tell you the answers. I remember one girl who had vocal cord dysfunction. Vocal cord dysfunction occurs when your vocal cords close when they're supposed to open. So when you're trying to breathe in and your vocal cords are closed, you can't breathe. So she had that for 3 weeks straight, including in her sleep, which is unusual. Usually functional symptoms occurring because of psychological reasons will stop when you fall asleep, but she had it the whole time. And then finally I talked to her subconscious. Subconscious said she saw her stepfather selling drugs. She didn't want to tell her mother, so she made sure she couldn't talk. This is a subconscious of a 12-year-old explaining what's called a conversion disorder, pediatric term, when the physical symptom solves a psychological issue. And so I talked to her a bit more, and I convinced her she could trust herself. And as soon as she agreed she could, her symptom went away. So that's a complex but simple demonstration of how powerful the subconscious is, and how I think it's frankly disappointing that mental health professionals don't routinely use this kind of approach. It doesn't work for every patient, but it works for a substantial number. So that's the third session, interacting with the subconscious. And after that, it depends on the child. Sometimes we'll explore particular issues that they might bring up from the subconscious or conscious self. The average kid I probably see 10 times these days. When I was purely medical, I usually saw kids maybe 3 or 4 times. But since I moved to California, I've had a lot of kids refer to me with primary psychological issues like anxiety or depression. They take longer. Some kids I see for years, but that's the exception. Usually if I see kids for longer than 3 months, it's because they've done really well and just want to keep talking. It's not that I'm seeing somebody a long time and they're not getting better. That's sort of what I do with kids.
Mm-hmm. The vocal cord dysfunction, it's a little bit it's scary, right? This child, the subconscious had told the conscious that you are not allowed to say anything about your stepdad. You are not allowed. So what was it? Potentially she was dreaming, and that's what shut her vocal cords down while she was asleep? Or
well, I'm not sure the mechanism. I guess I think the subconscious shut down the vocal cords, and how we don't know how this works. This has not been well studied. If I can tell you a recent case, it's not in my book, but I did publish a blog about it recently, was an even more complex case. Let me share with you just to show you the power of the subconscious. Mm-hmm. So this was a 12-year-old boy who came to me with vocal cord dysfunction, and he had it for a year. In this case, it wasn't in his sleep, it was just when he was awake, but it was partial vocal cord dysfunction. So you could hear him softly throughout the day. And he had seen a speech therapist for several months, and he wasn't getting better, and she sent him to me. And so I said to him, well, we'll go put through the program, find out what's going on. And we got to the subconscious part, and the subconscious explained that a year before I met him, he had nearly committed suicide. And what had happened was he was allergic. He was also allergic to peanuts. And an allergist was giving him increasing dose of peanuts to try to desensitize him. And he developed a really bad allergic reaction. He couldn't breathe. He had hives, itchy, scratchy skin. And he got really scared, and nobody was able to help him. And in fact, he had heard he might have epiglottitis, which is a very infectious, life-threatening disease she didn't have, but he heard that. And so he got really scared, and he was miserable for 2 weeks, and he was so miserable he decided to kill himself. And he didn't do that, obviously, and then he felt really bad that he had gotten so scared, and he hadn't told anyone. And the vocal cord dysfunction was sort of a memory of almost he was going to hang himself. So we went through this. The subconscious told me all this. And I sort of talked him through it, and we agreed that's past and let it go. And his breathing became normal. And the next day, he went to school, played basketball with his friends, and then he felt uncomfortable, and he sat down, and he seemed to forget things. When he went home, he was forgetting things. He asked when his dinner, and then he couldn't remember. He asked again when his dinner. His parents were concerned, and they took him into their bedroom to sleep with him. He kept asking, "Why am I in the bedroom?" Well, like he didn't have short-term memory. And the next morning, he stayed at his home to go to school, and he couldn't study because he couldn't remember anything. His parents called me and they said, "That's a strange kind of symptom." We brought him back, And I asked the subconscious, what's going on? He said, well, he went to school and he remembered a classmate had hung himself the year before. And he didn't want to remember that because it scared him. So his subconscious made sure he didn't have to remember it. But his subconscious explained this to me. And I said, well, this is not really a good way to be, because you have to remember things. You can't live not remembering. Subconscious said, well, he either has to have bad breathing or no memory. And I said, that doesn't sound like a good solution either. We sort of negotiate for a while. And he comes out of hypnosis with the bad breathing again. And he's mad that he can't breathe, but he remembers what happened. And I explained to him the subconscious, he had to have one or the other. Well, I'd rather not have a memory. And we sort of negotiated some more, and he agreed to still going to have a memory that night, but then he could forget the next. And then he came home and he told his parents some more things. So he had watched a video to show him how to hang himself. He had put the foam cord around his neck. He had 5 different nights he almost killed himself. This story comes out. Calmed down again, everything better, and then he gets up in the middle of the night, and he can't see quite right, and he gets up in the morning. He's blind, he can't see. Bring him back. Subconscious explains he's not really blind, he can't see though. But it's like sometimes I hear about the miracles Jesus did. I don't want to offend anyone and how he cured people and stuff, but I've cured people like that too. And I'm not saying I'm Jesus-like. I'm just saying Jesus might have cured functional symptoms. Who knows? So this blind boy comes, the subconscious explains, well, I didn't want him to see the hangers and the vents in the room. He won't remember what he did. So we talked through that. He's okay. The next day he tells his parents, don't stress me. Don't stress me. But they get into an argument. He wanted to go to a friend's house, and the dad wanted him to stay at home so he could be watched. And then he goes deaf. And the parents already know about this, so they asked the subconscious to explain. The subconscious said, I don't want to be stressed. I want to be reminded of this. I'm not hearing it. Like seeing no evil, hearing evil. And then he would talk through that. And the next day he's taking a shower and he can't move his arms. And his dad has to come and get him and dry him off because he can't move his arms. Subconscious explains, I didn't want him to hang himself, so I made sure he could move. So we talk about it again. You see what the subconscious is doing? It's putting him through all these symptoms. All the symptoms are protected. Mm-hmm. They're all put in an intent to protect him, kind of weird protection. So we talk about it again. I said, well, maybe it's time for him to just deal with what happened. And the subconscious said, okay, I'll take care of it. And he had a very restless night. And at around 1 in the morning, he wakes up and tells his dad, calls his dad by his first name. Never does. He says, he'll be okay in the morning, talking third person. I think that was subconscious talk. The next morning, he was fine. He only had one other episode. 6 weeks later, he was playing basketball. And he heard overhead older kids yelling, if I don't make the shot, I'm going to kill myself. He got deaf momentarily. Subconscious promised not to do that again. The next half year was fine. I discharged him. He said, I'm glad I'm a normal boy now. So this is a very unusual case. One in 1,000. But I described it to you in great detail because I want you to understand the variety of ways symptoms can come out because of subconscious issues, and why it's so important to understand the underlying psychology so you can treat them. If I try to treat them with medications or with physical therapy or with just talking when he doesn't even know what's going on, I would get anyone. This is why people need to understand hypnosis better.
I agree. The cognitive behavior therapy will only go so far, right? For an instance like this, where he keeps on having these repeated symptoms, the first thing that, the average practitioner would do would get the MRI, make sure that, everything's going on okay up there. There's no brain tumor. There's none of that going on. And then you'd probably prescribe some kind of psychotic medication right?
Antipsychotic, yeah.
Antipsychotic medication. And then the medications would just start piling up on top of each other.
They won't work. They won't work because none of those are solving the underlying issue. And I've seen medical cripples. I had a girl once, this was a medical issue, who came to me at 12 years of age, with bad asthma who had been on oral steroids, prednisone, for 10 years. If you know a little bit, steroids are bad for you. You know that. Inhaled steroids are okay with very low dose, but oral steroids, bad news. You give her 5 days, 10 days, but 10 years. Why? Every time they took her off the steroids, she'd end up in intensive care with a bad asthma. And they knew she was anxious. When she was 10, they sent her to a psychologist who met with the family 10 times but didn't get anywhere. And I met her at 12 years of age, taught her hypnosis, taught her to calm herself. And then she found that the hypnosis worked better than the rescue medicines she was using. I weaned her off the steroid. It took me a year to get her off because her body was hooked on it, used to it. It took a year. She was hospitalized once when her mother was undergoing hysterectomy. I did not put her back on the steroids. I gave her, I think, a dose of Valium, 1 dose, because she was anxious. And then after a year, she got off the steroids. After 2 years, she stopped all her asthma medicines, which she shouldn't have done because she did have some asthma. So I had to yell at her, put her on mild medicine, but never used steroids again. And she was much better, but she was made a medical cripple because she was short, she was overweight, she had bent back, she had brittle bones, because the doctors treated her symptoms with medicines as opposed to effective psychology. And I've seen the same thing with mental health kids. I remember one kid I saw, another 12-year-old, I don't know, all these are 12s, who had a ghost come to her every night telling her to kill herself. And she tried to commit suicide twice. She was hospitalized a number of times. And she was on 5 antipsychotics and didn't address the issue. She still had this ghost. And when she came to see me, it was sort of weird. I was a pulmonologist and she came to see me, this kind of history, but thank God she did, because I talked to her subconscious. I talked to the ghost. I asked through the girl. I didn't see the ghost. I asked the ghost through the girl, why is it true you wanted to kill herself? She said, yes. I said, why? She's had a horrible childhood. I want her to be able to relive her childhood. Makes ghostly kind of logic, I suppose. I said to her, well, I'm teaching her to cope with her difficult childhood. And when she dies of old age, when, not if, she can relive her childhood if she wants to. The ghost said, that works for me. I would like to become her guardian angel. And I said to the girl, would that be okay with you if she becomes your guardian angel? She said, yes, as long as you don't see her anymore, she spooks me. I said to the ghost, is that okay with you? The ghost said, yes. I said to the ghost, say goodbye to the ghost. Black ghost, never seen again. Took her off all the antipsychotics, and 6 months later, she was discharged on Prozac, which is an antidepressant.
Amazing.
Again, this girl is made a mental health cripple because mental health providers aren't talking to patients. So we really have a problem in our medical system. The solution is here, but how to get the word out? Hopefully, your program will help get the word out.
So, Dr. Anbar, do you ever work with autistic kids?
High-functioning autistic kids all the time.
Okay.
And they respond generally very well. I think one of the important things when you work with high-functioning autistic kids is to help them accept themselves. Autism can be a gift, a different way of thinking, and that gives you a gift because you can see things in a different way. And so using hypnosis, we can strengthen their self-confidence, give them tools to use. I remember one boy, 13-year-old, had meltdowns all the time. Kids with autism have a hard time sometimes dealing with too much stimulation. And when they're younger, they just melt down and have a big, not panic, but behavioral can be very disturbing. And he had been taken out of traditional school and put in a school for behaviorally challenged kids. But this kid was brilliant, and behaviorally challenged kids on average were not brilliant, much less than that. And so he had even more behavior problems because he was bored to death. And I taught him some self-coping skills, and I told his parents, get him back into mainstream school and give him an IEP, an individual educational plan that can help let him, if he needs to cool off, let him cool off. And he went back to regular school, and he actually came back to see me 7 years later. And he's He was a freshman at one of our outstanding universities here. He's a pre-law student, and he thanked me for getting parents to put him in a regular school.
Amazing.
And again, he was made crippled by the system.
Yeah.
We need to help kids like that. Kids with more traditional autism or more effective at autism, hypnosis is a little bit difficult because, remember, it depends on the way I teach it for them to do it for themselves. I've done behavioral modification. I remember one kid had a habit cough. I was saying because I was a pulmonologist. Kid with tradition. I don't know what they call it. They call it all autism, which I think is an interesting thing, but medium functioning autism. And he would cough. He would read a book and cough every page he read the book. And I said to him, well, how about you like the apples? How about you get an apple if you don't cough? Cough stop. So that was that. It's not a simple solution. That's not hypnosis.
Yeah. So, Dr. Anbar, you work with children. How about if the child is super young, like where they, like children, the range of children from 0 to 18, right? That's our definition of children. So
Right.
when you work with someone who's really, really young, it has to be different than you would work with a 12-year-old.
Sure.
So can you give us an example of something that was going on with a 3-year-old or a 2-year-old
Sure.
that you work with?
So my daughter, when she was 3 years old, had to have heart surgery. And she was very afraid of the bandages coming off. And so I told her the story of the Three Little Pigs, which is her favorite story. And when the wolf huffed and puffed, she huffed and puffed with us, and the bandage came off as the wolf was huffing and puffing. She didn't even notice. That's an example of a 3-year-old hypnosis. So young kids, the hypnosis really is dependent on an adult or somebody organizing. Another example would be there was a 3-year-old girl who wouldn't use the potty just to poop. She was afraid, and common issue. And so I actually didn't see her in person. This was on video because I still do work in Syracuse, New York, but I do it by video. And I told her that I wrote a story about Daniel Tiger. Daniel Tiger is from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and he has his own show now, apparently. And Daniel Tiger also had a poop problem. And so what he did is he sat on a potty and he played with Play-Doh, which is the motion the intestines need to do. And then he said, when it was time to go, he said, "Go, poop, go." This girl's favorite story was "Go, dog, goes." Go, poop, go. And we wrote a story like that together, and I sent it to her. And the instruction was to read the story every night. And after a week, she was telling the story. And after 2 weeks, she started going to the potty, and that was that. So the story had elements which were suggestive, hypnotic elements, if you like, imaginative elements that got the message across. And that was another example of 3-year-old.
It's fascinating how children are just so suggestible. And I've worked with the youngest I've ever worked with is a 10-year-old. So I'm not sure about you, Marina. What's the youngest child you've worked with?
I've worked with some autistic children that functions at a little bit of a younger age, but my youngest was actually 18, so I haven't worked with that young. But I do apply it in things in my personal life, where with my grandbaby, even though he's still very young, I do use that imagination and the playfulness, and I tell him every time I see him how amazing he is, and that he is just phenomenal. I just use my words a lot because I know the power of words and the power of him understanding it and hearing it and letting that in. So I think in a lot of ways I use it. But there was something else that came up here. I was wondering if I should bring it up. And so my dear friend here, Dr. Anbar, is having heart surgery tomorrow. Fran, if you're okay, if I share that. So I want to hypnotize her. And I know she's not a 12-year-old or a 3-year-old or whatever. So any advice or any Any, let's say, good wishes.
So first of all, I wish you much success.
Thank you. Thank you.
Um,
That's why I'm in the hotel room, right? I'm not in my own
My
home.
wife underwent open heart surgery earlier this year. So you know some of the path. So first of all, you can do a lot of visualization regarding healing. So you can imagine little doctors or little armies or little nurses going through your heart and healing, and to your chest healing. You can imagine healing quickly, faster than because the doctor will tell you, oh, it's going to be 2 months, 1 month. Don't listen to that. You can go on your own pace, and you can surprise everyone by how rapidly you recover. In terms of discomfort control, you can learn how to. I'm sure, Marina, you know how to teach their comfort. I don't use pain control. Comfort and discomfort.
Like that.
When you take discomfort, take away the dis, you get comfort. So there's many different comfort control measures you can take, anywhere from changing the color of the discomfort to a more comfortable color, to spreading a part of the body that feels good, to spread that goodness to the part that needs healing, to imagining a control panel in your brain that controls the level of comfort you have, to taking the discomfort from the chest to the little finger wicks more tolerable. There's all sorts of ways of dealing with discomfort. Also seeing yourself fully recovered and how great that will feel. And so those are some future projection techniques can be very helpful. Yeah, there's if I was working, I would ask the subconscious for input. Do you have any things you want to suggest that should be done? Some ideas.
Those are all good. I never even thought of that, Marina. Thank you. I had never even thought of it. I know I'm bringing in. I have to lay flat after the operation for a long, long time, and it's like going to be super bored. So, I mean, I'm bringing in my phone, and I was going to listen to some meditations, but I like that idea. I really like that idea of actually using my own self-hypnosis, because Dr. Anbar, you probably do it a lot. I know Marina does. I do self-hypnosis on myself a lot of the time, just when, if it's dark and I have to wait for something, it's like, sure, I'll do self-hypnosis. And it's quite interesting what comes up, what comes out, what I can do. And I've been doing that a lot lately, actually, the self-hypnosis. But I like the idea of having my own body, have little nurses and doctors in there, and telling each other what to do, and go up to that spot and send some healing light and spread the good from this part of the body to that, to send the healing, and the control panels in the brain. Those are all excellent ideas. Thank you.
And if you hear any negative statements from the doctors, reframe them immediately. Don't take them in.
Okay.
Like if they say something, oh, this is going to hurt a little bit, I'm going to make it as comfortable as possible. If they say, oh, you're not breathing well, I'm going to allow myself to breathe better. So you want to reframe it. Don't take in negative, because the doctors don't even know. So they'll say negative things. You're trying to help, but they don't understand. Like, I think informed consents are terrible. You might die from this. That's a really good message to give.
Yeah, I love those commercials on TV, like, take this pill, but caution. And then they talk faster and faster and faster. All the side effects, which is this long. And they have to cram it into this space. And I'm like, wow, yeah, I'm not taking that. Thank you. So another question I have for you, you were mentioning about that one patient, you ended up teaching the parents how to get him into talking to the subconscious. How did you do that?
Well, that one patient, the parents were in the room when we were talking, and they actually picked up on their own. I actually cautioned them to stop.
Oh, good.
Because they're not therapists, and it's really sometimes you get surprising things, and if you don't handle it well, you might get an upset patient. So, for example, I saw an 11-year-old recently who came because he had anger control issues, and he learned very well. He actually has an old soul. I assume you know what old souls mean. But I meet kids I know right away. The kids I connect with typically are old souls, and he's a very old soul. He's pretty funny. He's 11. He was acting. I was sharing a meal with him, and he spilled something, and I laughed at him, not in a cruel way. I said, "You're so well put together. Why you control that body of yours?" It's like it's so funny to see an old soul in a young body. But anyway, so I asked the subconscious, "Is anything you want to say?" Just very open-ended. He says, "There's a ghost here." Okay, I didn't expect that, but okay. Who is it? Well, it's his grandfather's ghost. Grandfather passed away, and does he have a message for you? No. Is a message for your father? Yes. What's the message? He's worried about the grandmother's health. Okay, good. And the kid said, "I have a question. Okay, are you in heaven?" And says, "No." So the kid's a little freaked out. He's Catholic. So I said, "I have a question. Are you here right now?" Grandfather says, "Yes." "Are you visiting from heaven?" "Yes." "Oh, okay." It was important that I, as a therapist, was there so I could sort of rescue him, right? Because if he had been on his own doing this, he might have been freaked out. Grandfather's in a bad place. So I generally recommend that family not interact with subconscious. Yeah. Although I do teach kids to interact with their own subconsciouses. And like I'll tell them, if you're taking a test, I want to answer, the subconscious might be able to give it to you. It's not cheating because it's part of you. Kids really like that.
Yes, I love that you are able to. I've helped young people with exam anxiety, and have you gone over the work? Yes. Now go remember it, and how amazingly that works. Like they can retain that information. They have gone through it. They have read it, and now they can remember it. It's just amazing.
Mm-hmm. When I was listening to one of the podcasts you did, you talked about SpongeBob SquarePants.
Yes.
So can you tell our viewers about SpongeBob SquarePants? Because I think it's just hilarious. And then I'll ask you a question because I have a student in my classroom that I want to ask your advice about.
So the story you might have heard about, and SpongeBob has appeared a number of times in my patients' lives because I'll use whatever they bring me. Yeah. I hate SpongeBob personally. The story that I often tell is about the 6-year-old who had a seizure disorder. And he was having seizures 3 times a month. And it started at birth because he had bleeding in his brain, and one part of his brain wasn't working well. And it started one part of his brain and it spread to the rest of the brain. He tells mom something's going on, and then he'd have a seizure. And I was seeing him for his asthma, but I was always curious whether hypnosis could help prevent seizures, because maybe if you think differently, it'll change your brain wave patterns. That's hand wavy explanation. So she said I could work with him, and he liked SpongeBob, and I said to him, "So, what's SpongeBob made of?" He said, "A sponge. What it makes a sponge? It has holes in them." Okay, so at night, every night, put SpongeBob on your head, and when a storm comes, let it go through the sponge and don't keep it in your head. That was the 30-second hypnotic suggestion. So every night, he initially put his SpongeBob toy in his head, then he just went to an imaginary SpongeBob, wrapped him around his head a few times, say the magic words, and he hasn't had a seizure in 8 years.
Amazing.
Now, I actually contacted him before the book was published to make sure he's okay. I tell his story in the book. What's interesting is his EEG, his brainwave study, still showed seizures, but he no longer manifested them. So is the hypnosis covering up the seizures, or the seizures? We have people who have physical problems but don't have, or they have physical abnormalities but don't have symptoms. So, like I had a boy once with headaches and nothing would make it go away, and finally in hypnosis he said, "Well, we agreed that they won't bother him anymore." So like a half year later, do I have to go see a neurologist? The headaches don't bother me anymore. It's still there, but don't bother me. Probably not. I had a boy with a cough that wouldn't go away, and he said the cough was part of his identity. He'd had it for so long. So don't want to give that away. So the cough agreed to be quiet. And then he no longer had the cough. Well, no longer had a noisy cough, and he was fine. So you could see these kind of negotiations that sometimes are required to help people heal. So tell them about the student in your class.
Yeah, so I was listening to one of your podcasts, and you had talked about SpongeBob SquarePants, and then you talked about how a stuffed animal, like a little stuffy toy, if you're having a child, or your child or your student or whatever is having acting out episodes, and he's just so oppositional defiant that he won't listen to an adult authority.
Yes.
Sometimes by telling the stuffy to tell the child, that's successful, right?
Yes.
So I used that idea.
Writing it up as a medical article, let people know. Yes.
I mean, it's incredible. I mean,
have you done it with him yet?
I never had a chance to, because I listened to this podcast where you described it, but I've been off of work for a bit because of medical issues. And so, but I told the substitute teacher to do it, right? I'm like, you're going to end up having some issues with this boy. It's just going to happen. And she goes, yeah, I know him. I've known him since he was in grade 1. Yeah, don't worry, Fran, I know him. And I said, this is what I heard on a podcast by a pediatric hypnotherapy doctor. This is what he said to do: talk to the stuffy. And this boy, before I listened to this podcast, he'd want to bring a stuffy into class all the time. And it's okay if you have a stuffy, but just don't play with it all the time. Don't throw it. Don't all that stuff, because it gets out of hand, right? So I told the substitute teacher, if he brings the stuffy in, let him have it, have some parameters around there. And then if he doesn't listen to you, talk to the stuffy and have the stuffy tell the child what he's supposed to do. And so she used it, right? So I talked to her yesterday, and she said, he's doing better, but now he's bringing 3 stuffies in. 3. And I'm like, I have no idea what to tell you, but I'll talk to Dr. Anbar, because I'm going to talk to him like right away here. So Dr. Anbar, what are we going to do with 3 stuffies?
All right. So first of all, I think the reason this works is when you talk to a stuffy and the brain processes what the stuffy is saying, you're using different brain pathways than the normal pathway. And I think that's why the kid who's oppositional in his usual brain pathways may not be oppositional. Use alternative brain pathways. That's my theory. It's not been studied. Somebody could do the research to prove it. If he's bringing 3 stuffies, I would say, first of all, which is your spoke stuffy of the day? Which one is going to be the one presenting the stuffy? Ask that question. I would actually ask the stuffies, are you okay? Do you think you need all 3 of you here? I would actually use a stuffy as a co-therapist or the co-teacher. Okay. So do you think it's a good idea for all 3 stuffies to come every day, or do you think only one of you should come every day? I would ask the stuffy that question. If they say all 3, well, what are your roles? What is your job? I would ask each stuffy, and I would respect whatever the stuffy tells you. You have to be creative. I haven't encountered that, but the key to therapy, in my mind, and to teaching probably as well, is to meet the child where they're at. Don't tell them how to be. Don't go by the protocol, because every child is different. So he brings 3 stuffies. Okay, what are the roles? Get them engaged and have them help solve the issue. Like the girl with the poop problem, she told me about Go Dog Go. She told me about Daniel Tiger, and I just use those elements to help her. So let him tell his story, and maybe if he's misbehaving, aside from the stuffy, talking to stuffy, ask the stuffy, why is he misbehaving? What's going on? Have the stuffies explain what's going on. Those could be really good co-teachers for your substitutes. And you'll have to tell me what happens.
I will. I'll let you know, because I had never thought of that. All I could think about was, oh my God, how's he going to even fit a book on his desk? And how big are these stuffed animals? Like, that's that teacher in me thinking, gosh. But I just thought it was
do you think you should hide under the desk? Where should you belong? Or ask the stuffy. So how he's going to fit the book in the desk? What do you think? Let's see what the stuffy says. How old is this kid? Like 7? What's the
10. He's
10.
10.
All right, so the stuffy's will be quite wise, I think, if you give him a chance to talk.
I like it.
See, now you have a great reason to heal very fast, Fran, and rush back and go see what the stuffies are saying so that you can tell us.
I think we need to air this one right away, Marina. I think we need to air this one.
That's amazing. Yes. So, as our time is just about up, Dr. Anbar, how can we get hold of your book? And if there are any people who would love to consult with you, how can they get hold of you?
Okay, so first of all, the book is up here.
I see it.
Changing Children's Lives with Hypnosis. You can get it on Amazon.
Perfect.
Very good at delivering within a day or two. I encourage people to get the book, not just because I'm an author, but the book is written for the public. My dream with this book is that people will read it, realize the value of hypnosis, and pass the word along. Because the medical profession not doing a good job at this. The mental health profession not doing a good job. So hopefully the public can do a better job. If you want to get a hold of me, you can go to dranbar.com, ERAN as in Nancy, BAR.com, or centerpointhypnosis.com, CENTERPOINT hypnosis.com. And there's a lot of resources about hypnosis there. There's also information about the book. And you can also contact me through there. I am available for consultation for people in California and New York. The way medical licenses work, I cannot see people outside of those states where I'm not licensed. However, if you're elsewhere, I can give you resources where you can find qualified practitioners.
Wonderful. And are you writing another book right now? Are you in the process of a new book?
I am in the process of a new book. This one is directed at teenagers, with chock full of different ideas. There's going to be a section called Teen to Teen where my patients will give advice to other patients. So cool from the stuff they've learned. And there'll be little tips for parents. And then every chapter will have probably 5 or 10 different tips. If you just read one chapter and apply 2 tips, your life could change. My big challenge with that book will be to get teens to open it.
What you need to do, Dr. Anbar, is make it a graphic novel. If you make it a graphic novel, it'll be read. And that would work even for the middle years, right? The middle, grade 5, grade 6, grade 7, grade 8. Graphic novels are a hot ticket item.
That's good advice. Maybe I will investigate doing that. That might be a good thing. Or even if we just have a graphic thing on every chapter, it's going to be like 20 chapters. So there'll be a drawing or illustration. It might be really good. So thank you very much for that suggestion.
Both the visualizing, right?
Yep, love it.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
It was amazing. Thank you for teaching us and for all the amazing work that you are doing.
Appreciate it so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming and being with you and giving me those ideas so that I can heal quickly.
And friend, I wish for you, pray for you, good healing, rapid healing, and a good, long, and healthy life.
Thank you.
Yes.
I appreciate that.
When you die in your old age, you will remember.
And I will invite you both to dance at my 100th birthday party with me.
I look forward to that. Okay, thank you so much for joining us today. And if you like us, you know where to subscribe, and we will see you next time at the place where hope is happening.
Bye-bye.